All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Representative Watson, would you lead us in a word of prayer before we get going?
Be glad to. Let's pray. Dear Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for all your many blessings. Just thank you for this great state. Just continue to be with us in this meeting and lead and guide and direct us. Just continue to pray for the families dealing with COVID across our state and our nation. Continue to pray with the people in Afghanistan and our soldiers wherever they are. Just continue to lead and guide our leadership and just give us all safe travels back home. And your name I pray. Amen.
Amen and thank you. All right, here we are with the Medical Cannabis Commission Oversight Committee. Just to give you a brief overview of what we're here today to do is we are currently looking at other states and looking at potentially what they do for their third-party lab testing. And Representative Gravely will be going over some of those states, as well as what is the actual function of this committee. So Representative Gravely, would you like to take it away?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Medical Cannabis Oversight Committee, which was established in 2019 in the passage of House Bill 324. I want to first thank everybody for being here, especially the committee members. I know that some of you had to drive a great distance. So Senator Brass, thank you for being here. Chairman Watson, Sam Watson, thank you for driving up. And I know that Senator Freddie Powell Sims may be joining us via the live stream or through the Zoom link. But I first want to read off in the legislation exactly what the Medical Cannabis Oversight Committee, which was formed and is meeting today, has the authority to do, and why the creation of the committee was deemed important by the legislature. And I have a copy of House Bill 324, and on line 333, 16-12-207, the General Assembly shall establish a Medical Cannabis Commission, a Medical Cannabis Commission Oversight Committee, with 2 members appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and 2 members appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Any member of the Medical Cannabis Commission Oversight Committee shall be permitted to inspect any production facility upon request and after reasonable notice is provided to the production facility. In keeping with record and how things were progressing over the last 2.5 years, the legislature then came back in this previous session with Senate Bill 195 and reaffirmed the creation of the Medical Cannabis Oversight Committee with Senate Bill 195. And I will read the excerpt. Line 240 through 244 is what is found in House Bill 324, with the new establishment starting in line 245. The commission, referring to the Georgia Medical Cannabis Commission, shall promptly provide any documentation or information requested by the Oversight Committee that is in its possession, provided that the commission shall not share documents containing data identifying individual patients or physicians, information marked as trade secrets by applicants or licensees, information that in the view of the commission would interfere with an ongoing license applicant selection, or in line 250 continuing, information that in the judgment of the commission would create law enforcement or security risks to the citizens of Georgia. Committee members, I would like to address lines 252 due to some unforeseen delays that the commission, the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission, had to deal with. Again, they were unforeseen delays. But line 252 says that no later than August 1st, 2021, the Oversight Committee shall recommend to the commission a process and plan for providing accredited lab testing of products produced by a licensee and for labeling such products. I want to stop right there after that Senate. As I mentioned, the unforeseen delays prohibited the commission from being able to name the cultivators until July 24th. That was Saturday, July 24th, when the commission actually announced the awards. The date set forth in the legislation on line 252 was immediately following the Sunday week, which didn't give the needed time for this oversight committee to meet and review states once the established cultivators had been named. So I wanted to just make note of that in this oversight committee hearing. I want to proceed therefore on line 254, where it says the commission shall consider recommendations of the oversight committee in adopting policies, procedures, and regulations regarding such testing and labeling. Line 257, the oversight committee may regularly seek input from patients and physicians as to the availability and quality of products produced pursuant to this chapter, and recommend to the commission changes to policies, procedures, and regulations to improve availability and quality. The commission shall consider such recommendations in adopting policies, procedures, and regulations. So that gives you an understanding of what the purpose of this oversight committee, why the committee was created, and the responsibilities of the oversight committee in relation to the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission and the recommendations that we will be setting forth. I wanted to also let you know that the House Research Office at our request has put together a report detailing the protocols in both Minnesota and in Utah regarding their testing and their labeling of medical cannabis in their states, which this committee will take upon itself to review. We also want to look into one or two more states just to make sure that the report we submit to the commission is thorough and that we have something moving forward for the citizens of Georgia.
Representative Gravely, would you just briefly tell everyone why we're looking at Minnesota and Utah? Just what was it about those particular states you liked?
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. Minnesota was one of the first states that myself and then Representative Alan Peake visited as we were tackling the issue of medical cannabis here in Georgia. Minnesota also mirrors Georgia from respect of the diagnoses that they have allowed, the patient registry that they have allowed. Also, when we were up there, the percentage of THC. So there was a lot of commonplace with Minnesota and Georgia that we felt comfortable in kind of taking a second look of how they've matured in their law and how they've then started testing and labeling their products simply because of the similarities between our state and the state of Minnesota. Utah, in the same regard, Utah took a very cautious approach in doing this, while other states, I think, proceeded in a very fast measure. Georgia wanted to remain cautious and make sure that we were getting it done right. Utah actually mirrored some of those same qualities that we were looking at, and we were wanted to take a look and kind of take the best of both of those states and probably throw in one or two other states as well. Also, Utah and Minnesota are both non-recreational states up until this point, which Georgia is as well. So we wanted to kind of stay true to that course here in the state of Georgia. And it's my understanding, Senator, that those copies of those reports are being made right now and will be presented to the committee members.
We're going to stand at ease until the printed copies of the report get to us. Should be about 5 minutes. All right, we're going to call this meeting back to order. We now have the printed copy of the report. And so, again, Representative Gravely, if you'll just go through this, 2 states that we looked at, talk about the pluses and the minuses, and we'll go from there.
You. One of the things that I wanted to highlight again, Minnesota and Utah are the 2 states that the House Research Office committed to us. And I'll just kind of go through some of the highlights. In Minnesota, the first point was manufacturers of medical cannabis in Minnesota are obligated to perform the duties listed within the Minnesota State Code 15.29, subsection C requires manufacturers to contract with a laboratory that is approved by the Commissioner of the Department of Public Health for the purpose of testing medical cannabis that is manufactured or acquired. These lab tests are required to verify that the product falls within the definition of the state's medical definition of what Minnesota has defined as medical cannabis in Minnesota state law. Minnesota's administrative code details the requirements for independent laboratories and also quality control procedures that manufacturers are required to follow to ensure that the product is consistent and within legal limits. I think that here in Georgia, that would be one of our top priorities to ensure that the product actually the patients are purchasing from the cultivators not only is a safe product, but that it has been tested to determine exactly what's in the product and that the product falls within the definition of what we have defined as medical cannabis here in Georgia. An approved provider in Minnesota means a provider of performance testing samples that the commissioner has determined, provides an adequate volume of samples to perform statistically valid analysis. Section B calculates the number of standard deviations of the mean allowed using the results of all laboratories submitting test results after the exclusion of outlying values. And C allows a range of standard deviations of the mean no less stringent than the range allowed by the general requirements for the competency of reference material producers in ISO Guide 34. Also want to note the quality control program that is listed in Minnesota's protocol for testing and labeling under subpart 1 of this report. And this report should be available online to those who want to review the report as well. It says a manufacturer of medical cannabis must develop and implement a written quality assurance, which is labeled as QA, program that assesses the chemical and microbiology composition of medical cannabis. That assessment must include a profile of the active ingredients, including the shelf life and the presence of inactive ingredients and contaminants. Minnesota then goes on to have sampling protocols, sampling test levels, quality assurance programs, stability testing, reserve samples, which I want to go into as well. It's in subpart 5 of this report. And what they mean by reserve samples, this subpart requires manufacturers to retain a uniquely labeled reserve sample that is twice the quantity necessary to perform all of the necessary tests, and that represents each batch of medical cannabis. Store the reserve batch under conditions consistent with product labeling and in the same immediate container system in which the cannabis is marketed, and retain the sample reserve for at least 1 year following the batch's expiration date. Retesting Subpart 6. This subpart provides the Commissioner of the Department of Health with discretion to require a manufacturer to retest any sample of plant material or medical cannabis if the commissioner deems that public health may be at risk. Yep.
So on retesting, if let's say a batch gets out and once it's tested, let's say it comes in at 6% THC levels, are they allowed, would they be allowed in Minnesota to send that back dilute it and then try to get it below that 5%, or do they have to throw out that whole batch? Do we know how that works? And I guess my concern is I would like to see us allow them to correct it, as long as it's, not going to affect the shelf life, but allow them to, if they come in over, go back and get it below that 5%. And main reason being, I just think that's going to drive up the cost for our end user. And I just want to kind of make sure that whatever we recommend, that we are recommending that under retesting, they are allowed to do that.
That's a very good question, and I see exactly what you're saying. If a product which is not defined as medical cannabis, as Georgia defines medical cannabis, ends up making it to the shelves, does the company have the ability to retest it after the guidance of the commission, get it to the standard that Georgia defines medical cannabis, and then resubmit? I haven't found that in Minnesota. However, I would not have a problem with that here in Georgia. As we discussed earlier, that's something that we can kind of tailor make to our protocols here in Georgia, that would allow the company to resubmit a perfectly good batch of oil, which ultimately is going to be more cost effective to the end user, the patients here in Georgia, as long as it has passed all the other tests. If it's just simply a matter of, well, there's a little bit more THC than is required by our state, or that is prohibited by our state, allow them to come back in, dilute it down, get it to the normal numbers, and then resubmit it. I don't think that should be a problem. And I can't say that Minnesota does or does not allow that, but I would imagine other states are thinking like yourself.
Okay. And I mean, just to clarify too, if you end up with a batch that's, let's say it's contaminated with whatever, all the stuff we're testing for, some of those batches will obviously need to be thrown out. But but in the case of it being too high THC, I do think they the licensee needs to be able to go back and dilute that, to your point. So thank you.
Absolutely. I want to stay right there with what you mentioned about if it did have some other things, potential dangerous or poisonous substances within there, the testing. I like what Utah went as far as to define what adulterant means. And I'll go ahead and read that now from the Utah code section. An adulterant means any poisonous or deleterious substance in a quantity that may be injurious to one's health, including pesticides, heavy metals, solvents, microbial life, toxins, or foreign matter. Analyte means a substance or chemical component that is undergoing analysis, and it goes through kind of what the batch, the quality, the cannabinoid. But I really like what they've gone ahead, and I'm assuming other states have as well, but this is the report we have right in front of us to define out. This is exactly what we're going to be looking for. This is going to fall within the definition of poisonous or deleterious substances. So we want to make sure that that is laid out in Georgia's code section as well, that we know exactly what we're looking for. One thing that I had brought up to Chairman Watson, and I'm seeing it across the board, and it's going to be something that we're going to want to revisit here in the state of Georgia, is the fact that many states are working in concert with or alongside the Department of Agriculture. I know here in Georgia, we're not doing that. That is something that I'm open to revisiting. If the commissioner, the department is open to that. Also, we don't want to force them to do something they don't want to do or they feel like is outside the bounds. But I think, Chairman Watson, if you have any comments on that, feel free to recognize you and let you speak to that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, I was looking at this and I noticed that in Minnesota, it looks like the Department of Public Health is involved in the testing. And then in Utah, the Department of Agriculture in the state of Utah is plays a large role in the testing. And I would assume that, pesticide use and that type stuff will need to be validated and make sure that things are okay there. So I think that's definitely a conversation to be had. But I was also noticing that it says here that in Minnesota, the manufacturer's contract with a laboratory that's approved by the commissioner of the Department of Public Health. Do we have a lab approved here yet? No. But then it also says later in section D, authorizing law that the commissioner shall approve the laboratory chosen by the manufacturer. Well, if they only pick one, a laboratory, then there's only one for the manufacturer to use. So I don't know if we want it that tight, or if we want them to have flexibility in the lab that they use, especially in today's world with COVID and delays and shutdowns. We want people to get the product tested as quick as they can, I guess. So just a comment there.
No, I think that's a great point. And, in my mind, what I'd like to see is, the commission lay out what is the criteria to be an approved lab, and then we not really set a number on how many labs there could be. And then it would be up to, I guess, to the individual licensee, production licensee, to go contract with those approved vendors, so to speak. And I think, to your point, the more competition we have within that, number one, we're going to get better pricing, which in the end keeps that price down for our end users. But also, you're going to have more competition so that they're getting test results in a timely manner. And we may want to consider making recommendations to the commission as they're laying this out, that testing does have to be done in a certain time, because what we don't want are delays in the process. But at the same time, we're going to have to balance, we don't want delays, but we still want to get safe product to our end users. So I think those are certainly things we all need to consider and as we make our recommendations.
Senator, if I may, I agree with Chairman Watson and the statement you just made. I think we've already dealt with a lot of limitations over the last 7 years, really, as we've been working on this. I think everyone would agree the most important, the most vital part of everything we've tried to do is the patient here in Georgia. Those who are in need of this particular oil, and making sure that that need for so many years has been sought after in desperation, with families having to order blindly over the internet, with families having to pull up stakes and go to other states. And, in a sense, I know some of them don't know what they've gotten in other states. So as much as we can make that process easy for them to be able in Georgia to purchase a safe lab tested oil right here, I think that there doesn't need to be any delays in that. And I think the approval from the commissioner, I think that, from a redundancy standpoint, we can approve the approval of the approved and approve that again. I think we have a great way of doing that here in the legislature. But I think once the guidelines or the requirements are laid out to what the commission recommends is an approved lab, I think that's the approval. If there are laboratories that come forward and they meet those requirements, and the commission agrees that these requirements have been met by this particular lab, company or entity, then therefore they're situated or in a position to start testing any of the companies. And if one of the 6 cultivators wants to they could partner with multiple labs, to be quite honest with you. And I want to make sure that the market is available to them to be able to do so. I think Chairman Watson brings up a great point with COVID and the protocols that we're still under. You could have something happen. If we only had a limited amount of labs in the state, something could happen. A lab could encounter some delays. And if that's the process, then now your testing is delayed. If your testing is delayed, now your product is delayed getting to the shelves. And I think having a variety of different labs available to those cultivators, I think would be a good thing here in the state of Georgia. Mr. Chairman, going forward, or Senator Brass, going forward, I also wanted to say that Utah, working through their Department of Agriculture, I know also that Kentucky is doing the same, working through their Department of Agriculture as well. And so I think that whether it be this legislative session or in the future, depending on who ends up becoming our agriculture commissioner, that we be open to talks and working with them and determining what level of interaction they want to have, and seeing if there's a partnership that can be made going forward, because this is an agricultural product. We're an agricultural state. And the Department of Ag has authority over seeds. They have authority over pesticides and how things are grown. I know you can speak to that a lot more than I can, and with greater authority, but I think having them involved going forward is a good thing, in my opinion. I think that our next step as an oversight committee is to make a recommendation. Again, I'll go back and read, and also want to highlight this point as well. That our responsibility include any member of this medical cannabis oversight committee shall be permitted to inspect any production facility upon request and after reasonable notice is provided to the production facility. Because those production facilities are not up and running at this point, that's something that we're going to have to wait and hold on. But at that time, we can go down and do a walkthrough. We can speak to employees there. We can work with local law enforcement. We're not limited in that capacity. Also, I want to have, I was texting with Director Andrew Turnage a few moments ago. I know that they are right now very much involved in responding to protest. I believe that date is coming up to where those responses to the protests have to be submitted. But I would love to work in tandem, in concert with the commission in making sure that our recommendations are in line with what their vision is, the vision of the legislature, and also holding them accountable to what, as an oversight committee, if that vision gets sideways from what the legislature intended through House Bill 324 and then Senate Bill 195, it's our job to come in and work with them to make sure that that path is corrected. Again, we may also, as committee members, seek regular input from patients and physicians as to the availability and to the point we were just talking about, the quality of the products produced under our law. And we can recommend changes to policies, procedures, and regulations to improve the availability and quality to the commission. So I see our role as an important role as we move forward in our state on the issue of medical cannabis. Mr. Chairman, and I would say that if we could have, I think it would be important for the committee to give a thorough review of this report. And I think that if there's another House research or Senate research would be willing to take a look at maybe one or two other states that are in line with Georgia. I don't know if it would be something we'd want to do to look at a state that doesn't have the same protocols and restrictions or laws that we have. I think we narrow it and keep it into a pool of states that kind of look like us from a medical cannabis perspective, that we allow the oil, we don't use flower, we don't use smoking. So staying in those states and seeing what their protocols are, I think would be beneficial to us as we move forward.
Yeah, on that note, I think I'd like to take a similar look like we did with Utah and Minnesota, maybe looking at Florida as well.
Yep.
Although there's, our system's not quite the same, just geographically, I think it'd be a good state to at least take a look at. And then, to your point earlier, is we can kind of go through and pick what we like and kind of a la carte menu and put something forward. Mr. Watson.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, that this Minnesota model looks to be very similar to us. And until our Department of Agriculture is involved in this process, that kind of eliminates the Utah model or any of the agriculture side of those states. So just, I guess, keep that in mind as we go forward. But I agree, we do need to keep it in the same specs as what we have here in Georgia.
And I want to add too, I toured a facility a while back, and I really wanted to focus on the lab testing side of it. And one thing that impressed me, and it seems like this is industry wide, but their partnership with the lab testing is very crucial, because they're really testing their product throughout the entire process. And as we know, it is quite a process to take it from a leaf plant, from a flower plant, and get that into the form of an oil. And we've even added the extra duty of them to get it to a 5% oil. So it is quite a process, and I was impressed. This one particular production facility, on the amount of testing that they were doing throughout that process. And so we do know that they're already doing it, and we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel here. We're just going to have to find the model that fits and suits Georgia best.
On that note, while we're sitting here, I think it would probably behoove us to, of the 6 awards that were listed on July 24th or announced on July 24th, I think 1 or 2 of those are multi-state operators. I think it would be in our best interest to see where 2 of the award companies are also operating in those states, and we could probably check out the protocols in those states where 2 of our existing cultivators are currently operating, and see if that would be beneficial to Georgia as well.
All right, is there anything else I'd like to review? So we'll continue to look at this report. I think our recommendation for now for the commission is to be looking at these report that the current report, and just know that these are 2 states we're looking at, and we'll drill down and make official recommendations probably at our next meeting. And we'll make sure and announce that meeting well in advance so that everyone knows. And should you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. So with that,
meeting, I think it would be appropriate for us to ask if the executive director or a member of the commission would like to attend and give just an update on the process thus far, and where we stand in the state on cultivation and the readiness of the companies to be able to provide oil.
Representative Watson, did you have anything else in closing? All right, well, thank you for everybody for tuning in and for your attendance, and we look forward to diving into this and making some official recommendations. With that, meeting is adjourned.